In this X-Minute Math video, we are going to look at how to find the inverse function for a given linear function. To start with, let's remind ourselves the inverse of a function f, let's say we call the inverse g, is just the function that undoes or reverses the effect of our given function f. So I think the easiest way to see this is with an example. So let's take a linear function, say f of x equals 4x. Well, what is the effect of this function? Well, it takes an input value, x, and it maps it over to an output value, we call it f of x. What's it actually doing? Well, this function is multiplying the input by 4. So if I want to undo multiplying by 4, what do I do? Well, we know this. We divide by 4. So we want to divide by 4 to get back to where we started. And that tells us, very simply, that the inverse function of f of x is, let's call it g of x. Well, in function notation, I'm supposed to take my quantity and I want to simply divide it by 4. If we rewrite that, we can write that as 1/4 of the input, x. Now, if your linear function is just a constant multiple of x, then it really is that simple. You're going to multiply by that constant, and to get the inverse, you're going to divide by that constant. Well, we know that not all linear functions look like that, so let's see a slightly more general example. Let's take f of x to be the function 1/3 of x, subtract 2. Well, what is this function doing? Well, this function is doing two separate things to our input value, x. The first thing it does is it multiplies by 1/3. Right? That is the coefficient of our x. So multiply by 1/3. But I'm not done then, because what I then do is I subtract off 2 to get my final output. So I subtract 2 and I end up over here with my output f of x. Well, if I want to undo this function, reverse the effect, I just need to reverse each of these steps in turn. So how do I undo subtracting 2? Well, quite simply, I just add 2. But I'm not done, because I also need to undo multiplying by 1/3. And if I want to undo that, I can simply multiply by 3. Right? Multiplying by 3 and 1/3 undo each other. So I've undone the effect of f. Let's record that in function notation. So the inverse of f of x is g of x equals, well, let's think, what did I do? I had my x first of all, and the first thing I did was I added 2. That was the first part of my function. And the next part of my function was I wanted to multiply the result of that by 3. So I'll carry that out using parentheses. I'll multiply by 3. So if I tidy this up so it looks a little bit more like a linear function, just distributing the 3, I get 3x plus 6 as my inverse. And it's really that simple. Now, if you want one more minute of math, why don't you try figuring out what the inverse of this function is? So f of x equals negative 2/3 x plus 6. And if you want to do X minutes of math Y more times, don't forget to subscribe to this channel.